think of this song by New Edition, Can You Stand the Rain? So Google has gotten to a point where if I am logged in, it knows that if I type in fact, if I type in, can you, Google knows how to finish this up. It knows I'm looking for this. And this is one example of how language processing kind of makes our lives easier every day by using a computer. So what fascinates me the most about this skill and this segment of machine learning is that it takes something that we use as communication and identity, and it tells us something about someone based on what they use. So if you have never watched RuPaul's Drag Race, or you are not part of a subculture that uses the word gooped, and you are not Gwyneth Paltrow, you might not know what this means. But Monique was having a conversation with another queen, and she was shocked. I think it was about the outcome of a challenge. And so if you don't use a specific word, even within the same language, you don't really have a context for it. And that makes language really diverse and robust because it tells a story about people because of the words they use or how they say it. Another example that just happened today was I was on Twitter, and one of my favorite people there was asking, Natalie was asking, what your favorite colloquialism is, which everybody has different contexts. So you don't necessarily have the same point of reference, and you might know all of the words in a statement, but you don't necessarily understand that phrase or that proverb. So now extend that to everywhere you have been in the world. And I should say, if you haven't been in other places, that's okay. I would like to acknowledge everyone right now who has not had the opportunity to get out of their subculture, not from a lack of trying, but just from a lack of opportunity. So we have this context thing can apply to so many languages, and you just don't know what you will learn from people. So given that, the possibilities that you can study with language processing are huge. There's over 3,900 written languages, and there's even more languages that are not necessarily written, but people speak them. So there is words for things, but they haven't been documented. So it's even broader than we think. Right now, and this is part of why we have Black in Data Week and Black in Data Skills Day, is English is the most dominant language in natural language processing, and that is just a product of the people who had the privilege and the opportunity to make computers first and to colonize the world. If you think even farther back, I mean, so many countries speak English, and that is not a result of all of us learning English because we just happen to be wanting to learn English. It was a product of forces in the world that made it so a lot of us speak it, but we also still have different contexts to it. So that, in a nutshell, is what fascinates me about language processing. And so at some point, I had been exposed to it, maybe in a class or two. It was given as an example. You know, you say language processing is where you can get the text messages on your phone to autocomplete, or that Google search, because you just, Google has collected all this information from all these things you type, and they have an idea of what you might say. So I wanted to know a bit more about what else I can do. And part of that is finding a compelling problem. So a lot of the time right now we have boot camps, and I I am not going to get into that, but all I would like to say is that I think everyone who wants to learn should not be scared by the cost of learning, because I have found that it can be a very supportive community of people to help you grow in whatever you want to do. And so with that, I found that I was able to learn for free using LinkedIn Learning. And this is a tip for anyone who does not want to pay for things because they can't afford it. If you live in a metropolitan area, your library might give you free access to LinkedIn Learning. So look into that. That might be helpful. So that's what I did. I found a problem that I needed to solve in my life for myself, and I used that to learn about language processing. So for example, one of my favorite problems, which you see over here, I would like to give a shout out to Curl IQ. Kimberly Hill founded a company where they use deep learning to examine the curl pattern of your hair, and then they recommend hair products for you. That is very cool. Um, Yeah, I think that's amazing. A lot of us have this problem. So, yeah, shout out to Kimberly. That is her website. So, on my small scale, my problem was I was looking for a job. So, at this point, hmm, I believe it had been about 5 months from when I started job searching. And it was very tedious. If you've ever looked for a job, it's a very tedious process. You go find things, and then you apply, and then you wait, and then you hope somebody hires you, right? So, for my part in laziness, I wanted to make it so I didn't have to spend so much time searching for the job. So, what I did is I made this project so that I can learn how to use NLP and some of its pipelines to solve my job problem. So let's just go over this for a little bit. If you are looking for a job, most of the time, whether it's Indeed or, wow, I'm blanking, LinkedIn, the one that's on here, um, you will see kind of a header which says, okay, these are a few things about this position. It's kind of luring you to click to say, okay, if these things match, then you might be interested in applying to this position. So the next thing you do is you click the description and you read all of it. And if all goes well, you say, okay, this is good. I'm going to apply. But for me and for a lot of other people who are immigrants but not US citizens or permanent residents in the United States, and I should say this example is local to the United States because this is where we are. Um, some of the jobs need you to have work authorization before they can hire you. This is really common, and especially right now with COVID, companies don't want to spend that extra bit of money because it can get a bit cumbersome with the paperwork and the cost of retaining talent. I don't know if you've been watching the news, but it is changing a lot. Immigration has changed so many times just over the summer, so it can get tedious. So if I see this, I figure out that I can't apply to this position at this point, and I move on. However, as I kept reading, I got to the Equal Employment Opportunity Statement, and the thing I usually look for in all those lists of things that they say they will hire you regardless of is citizenship status. So if I see that, I want to apply. But guess what? This is both of these things are in the same job description. So that is pretty confusing. So at this point, I have spent maybe 10 minutes, like really digging into this job description, seeing if I have all the skills. Depending on the length of the description, it could be 5 minutes. But at this point, I am not happy because I don't know, should I apply? Should I not apply? And with time, I learned that, excuse me, I learned that you will have companies that have a blanket policy that they will help, but for some positions, they cannot. It could be because they're working with government data or they're working with they are working with a small budget for that department. That could happen. So you don't get a good return on that time you spend searching. So what I did was I learned how to web scrape because I didn't know how to do that either. So I actually picked up two skills. I learned how to scrape, and then what I wanted to do was from all the positions I got, I wanted to get anything with any job titles I thought that were relevant to me, but sometimes it would return things that I could not apply for um, based on experience or location. Sometimes something I will tell if there's anyone who is searching and you're an immigrant, do not look at Virginia as much because it's a lot of government roles that require clearance. Um, I mean, you can look, but it's a lot of time to spend for somebody to maybe say yes on an exception. So after that, I took these descriptions, and I don't need all of them. I just need the ones that have indicators for whether or not there will be any words in there that tell me something about the status. So from this point, I then want to take all of the text and make sure that the computer can understand everything I needed to before I make a model. So in this example, um, you have descriptions that come as a list of things that they need, or they come as a whole paragraph. As I said before, some of them do not necessarily have an indicator, so I don't necessarily want to look at those because I don't have a very powerful computer as well. Um, and so I just make sure that everything is in the same form before it enters the model. And from then on, I was able to classify these jobs so that those that had, let me back up. I don't want to assume anything, so I'm just going to describe that classification is if I have a bunch of laundry, I want to put things in a white pile, I want an underwear pile, I want a red pile. So that was me. I was taking these positions and I was putting them in piles with a model. And so I would have a yes pile, like, yes, you should definitely apply, and a no pile. And there is one pile. I kept the ones that didn't have indicators because I still wanted to try. So maybe they didn't say anything, but that doesn't mean that it's a no. So from that, I was able to kind of take away one portion of my day, which was going to type and looking for the positions and saving it a link. I was able to get all of that in an Excel sheet. And I will say it's not the best model. It could be improved. And I have been wanting to do that. Um, but as the joke goes, you don't always finish one thing. It's technically finished, but it's not completely finished. But in the lesson here is that I was able to learn a skill that I wanted to do to use for something completely different. And it also helped me save time. So if anything else, if if you take nothing else away from this, I hope that you know that if you see something that you want to learn or to study, you should, one, acknowledge that, okay, I have a gap in this skill. I want to learn this skill, but definitely say that you will and you will try, because I don't remember who said this, and I think it was on Twitter, but you should get to a point where you're not confident about what you know, but you're confident that you can learn the things you don't know. And so that is for me the biggest lesson out of this. And that's my presentation. I thank you again for coming. If you have any questions, please ask them now. I appreciate you.
Hey, I want to say thank you for your presentation. It was fantastic.
Oh,
Um,
thank
so my name is Kwame Williams. I'm a newer data analyst. I've only been doing this for about a year, and I'm actually going through or have gone through a boot camp. And I know you mentioned it earlier, and you said at the time you didn't want to really you don't want to really go into that. If you don't mind, I want you to go into it. Tell me what your thoughts are.
you. I think that they can be helpful if they have the right intent. The problem is they don't always, well, they mostly don't, because there is this false promise of, I will help you get this education and you will get hired fast and then you can pay us back. But most of the time, that's not how it turns out. There is a lot of non-transferables that are not accounted for. And then also, the people who sign up, they have hope. Like, you have hope, you want to learn, you want to improve. And this is such a big sell to then 6 now you find out, oh my goodness, I have to pay this and I still don't have a job. So I think there's definitely better, there is some good boot camps, I will say. I am enrolled in a weekend program which is completely free, no strings attached, and all they want to do is educate people about data. I would recommend that for the next cohort. It's Correlation One's Data Science for All. So there is some very good things out there, but they're really hard to find.
Can
So
can you put that in the chat? The one that you recommend, if you don't mind, can you put that in the chat?
yep.
Thank you.
So just to amplify another one question that's in the chat, Jasmine said, what package and language did you use for your web scraping, and what resources did you use to learn?
Oh, good. So I used Python primarily. I will say I have missed Java. Java is my favorite programming language, but Python is just so built out for this kind of learning, and it's an easy language for beginners. So even though I was not a beginner, it was kind of easy to dive into it. And some of the packages that I used include NLTK and Nano Language Trouble Knowledge. That is a bad, yeah, but NLTK and GenSim, I will put those in the chat. Um, And also, I would say that Google is your friend, because I spent a lot of time discovering things that I did not find in a LinkedIn learning course. So you definitely have to, my mom likes to say, be explorative. So you have to do that. It's definitely a learning. You are learning how to learn as well. Yeah. Any other questions? or comments.
Any
Okay.
absence of any questions? Thank you. Oh, so Shania said, how much time would you say this automation saved you?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so let me just, for context, I would not do the thing where you apply for 5 jobs every day. I don't think that's useful because you're not getting the most value out of each send. So I would spend a good chunk of the day just searching for positions, searching for companies, searching for positions. And over time, you build a list of things that you go back to. So I used some of that list to kind of do the search. So I would say it saved me a couple of days a week in searching so that I was not Googling anything. I would just run that and then I would use the list to go to the job and fill in my application if I wanted to.
All right, another question is someone asked it in the chat is how long did it take for to build your routine and how did you have to adjust your model that you use based on the results you may have received?
So, wait, what is the first? I don't understand the first part of the question. If you could.
Okay. So that's probably me, my bad, but how long did it take to build your routine, so I guess your model, and then how long did you have to adjust the model you used based on the results you received?
So I spent maybe 2 months making this. I would wake up, I would spend half my day doing that, and then I would spend the other half actually looking for jobs because I still needed a job. And then at some point, I was not searching for jobs anymore. And to improve my model, I first of all tried to remove. So even though I kept the descriptions that had something in them, I then broke it further down where I only took the sentences where those indicators appeared so that it took out a lot of the noise from the extra text that was not really adding to the objective of what I was trying to do. So that helped a lot. And I know there's more that can be done with deep learning, but I haven't learned that yet.
And Blossom asked in the chat, did you already share where you work now?
Oh, I currently am on a contract role at Blue Labs. Thank you, Blossom. um, and I also, I have to say, I do all these tiny things. So my week consists of like 3 or 4 gigs rolled up into one. And that works for me. So it might not work for everyone, but um, it works for me. And I will say Twitter is a really good place to find um, people who you can talk to about some of the positions you want to apply to. So if you find a position, and this has gone into a job search thing, but that's fine. If you find a position, I would not just apply, I would try to find someone who works there and ask them questions because you might find from some of those answers that you don't want to apply. So, highly recommend. Okay, anyone else? Okay, so it seems like, oh, do you think you would be able to use your current knowledge in NLP to any project you currently work on? Oh, I think so. Is it Micah? I hope I am saying your name right. Yes, I do believe that because uh, not only did it teach me how to find things, it kind of teaches you to make a plan. So you know what you need to do. So I knew I needed to break things down get this thing, get this description, get this word. But then once you do that, you just have to find what tool you need to use. And I think that's a skill. That is a skill. So I always start with a notebook to say, okay, this is what I need to do. And now I just need to go and find how to do it. Yeah. So yes, that was a long answer, but yes. Okay. So it seems that is all of the questions. Thank you again. I think it's such an honor when people choose to share time with you or even laugh at a joke. That's just saying, like, hey, I get that context, which goes back to language again. But anyway, thank you for coming, and I hope you have a good evening. And yeah, I appreciate it. Bye.
Thank you, Sia. Aika.
Thank you, Aika.
Thank you, Sia. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for sharing your. Oh, there she goes.
Bye. Thanks.